I'm Rob,
I'm John,
and this is the Mint One Podcast,
where we talk all things NFTs and the rise of blockchain gaming.
So, John, it's been a hell of a year. Perhaps we should recap?
Yeah, let's take a look back at everything that's happened in 2022 and look ahead to 2023.
Well, as last week's episode showed, this isn't quite the year we had hoped.
No, definitely not. There's been hacks, there's been collapses, there's been an elongated bear market. But that's not to say there's not been good things as well.
There's an Elon Musk pun in there that I feel like we missed.
Well, I missed it wholeheartedly, so...
Right, we'll come back to that. We'll circle back round.
We'll see. We'll see if we get it before the end of the episode, but... I mean, that's just one of the many things that's happened this year is Elon's takeover of Twitter, which isn't really, like, Web3 related, really, but...
It's definitely... I mean, it definitely affects it in some way. I don't know if it's superficial only.
Well, it affected it yesterday when Twitter went down. So...
Yeah,
a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's the end. Elon's finally hit the off button." But no, it is back now.
No.
But as I was saying, there has been a lot of downsides this year, but there has also been a lot of upsides as well, and there's been a lot to be happy about and to celebrate. And I think for our final episode of 2022, we'll attack both ends. We'll talk a bit about some of the crap that's happened, but also some of the things we can look forward to, and some of the things that have really got us enthused about the Web3 industry moving into 2023.
Yeah. So one of the podcasts I listen to, they do at the end of every year, they do like biggest winners, biggest losers, best mechanism, bits and pieces like that. Have a think who you think is the biggest winner of this year, because I've been thinking about it. So I'll come back to it later in the episode, but have a think who you think the biggest winner is this year, because I'm pretty confident on mine now. I wasn't sure because it's so easy to just go, no one won this year. This was a dreadful year. But I mean, I was writing down just a few notes, and I started trying to order them, and it was just the year started so well. We had in January, NFTs hit a peak of $17 billion traded in a month. I mean, that is madness.
Yeah, that eclipses several of the previous years, if I'm not wrong.
So we did start pretty well, and then I moved into February, and I was like, okay, this starts to go downhill, and there's a little silver lining, which is this isn't the silver lining, but when Russia invaded Ukraine,
good job you prefaced that.
Yes, I did have to preface that. I stand with Ukraine, just to be clear. There was $69 million of crypto donated to Ukraine and Ukrainian citizens, and it really acted as a brilliant use case and example of decentralized and borderless money, which I feel like is very important and is a great silver lining for the beginning of what ended up being a pretty torrid year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of 2021 in popular media was, why are these pictures of monkeys selling for $500,000? And then, you know, the whole Ukraine situation occurred, and we saw for the popular media, the first true, like, positive use case, really. Like, hey, look, the community collectively has raised $60-70 million, which is going to Ukraine, which is helping with, you know, humanitarian efforts and all of these ways of trying to alleviate the harms of the conflict on the people of Ukraine, which you know, was great. It was great press for the industry. I mean, that's not the point of it. Obviously, the point of it was to help the Ukrainian people, but it was a good sign that, hey, you know, there is a use for decentralized money, effectively.
Yeah. Well, the fact that it could be used for that is great press, because we've often said stuff about that. I mean, we don't really focus on cryptocurrencies per se. We're not financiers, but it does underpin a lot of what happens in the crypto markets, and it is the first real use of blockchain technology, is the sort of decentralized money. yeah, I think it was really encouraging to see an actual example where there's people in a war-torn country who can't get their money out of their own country, which has been a problem in many, many countries. And particularly during war, you often see hyperinflation and bits and pieces, and you end up not having your money. But if you've got it in crypto, you can take it with you. You don't have to worry about it, getting it all out of the bank. I mean, it's not perfect, but given how early it is in crypto's life, it was a really positive story for a very dark time, which is, still ongoing. So yeah, that was one of the. So in the podcast I listened to, I'm going to take this down a different road. In the podcast I listened to, one of the guys said, like, when they asked what's the biggest loser in this year, I mean, you're spoilt for choice. You really are. Yeah, but one of the answers from one of these guys was the reputation of the crypto industry to people outside of it. And it feels like February was the last time where we really had, you might not like it, but look at this, like it can do this, we can do this with it. And then since then, for the rest of the year, it's been like, oh no, it's just been fire after hack, after crash, after theft. And you've just seen, I mean, now one of them jokes that, actually, this might have been a different podcast, but they were talking about how things have changed for them this year. And he's a VC, a crypto VC. And he was like, my dating prospects have gone through the floor. Like in 2021, I had so many dates, and like, because just the reputation has taken such a hit. Like last year, people would ask me, also, what do you do in crypto? What do you do in Web3? They were really interested. And this year, I mean, people don't ask anywhere near as much. It's almost like it was the fad that people thought it was.
I met a group of new people in my life about a month ago, friends of a friend kind of thing. It was basically the start of a party. I arrived early and none of these people knew me. So, of course, I started asking questions about who the hell is this strange person in their living room.
Sure.
And they were like, oh, so what do you do? And I was like, how do I explain it? So do you know what NFTs are? And they were all like, oh my God, you're not one of those people.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of reputation Web3 has right now. I mean, it kind of had that before, but even worse now that everything's crashed. And but kind of going back to that point, I think February, March, even though the whole concept of NFTs and Web3 was still kind of derided, there were things like Ukraine and several other situations where it's like, hey, this can be useful for something. But I feel like by the time we got to kind of May, June, July, we started seeing the first articles come out that were like, are NFTs dead? NFTs are dead. All the money's gone, blah, 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 blah. And you could definitely tell being in the industry. I mean, I think at the start of the year, Wax was still at, 40 cents? And then it hovered around kind of 15, 20 for a bit. And then it headed to 8, and then it headed to 6, and then it headed to 4. And other cryptocurrencies have just been on this kind of downwards slope for the past few months. And I think the more that happened, the more that we saw several things. One was all the articles saying NFTs are dead. 2 were people that hated NFTs being like, hey, I was proven right. Your internet money is worthless now. Ha ha ha. And it just kind of got worse from there with hacks and collapses and everything else, which I'm sure we'll get onto.
Yeah.
But have you felt that difference? Not just kind of in the community, but kind of in the wider space as well, as we've been on this slippery slope this year?
Yeah, it's definitely harder to argue with people who thought it was all a scam. I always rely, almost feels like a trope now, but I always rely on the same thing, which is like I like blockchain technology. I think the technology has a lot of applications, and a lot of the things that most people will focus on, and by most people I mean people outside of the industry, that they're going to focus on the more superficial applications of it, like NFTs, which isn't a criticism. It's just, I mean, that's what's there. That's what the media are reporting on. Whereas blockchain technology itself is far more interesting than that. And I'm sure there are so many parallels here with the dot-com bubble, with people just being obsessed about the silly investments and the silly amount of money that was moving around like Silicon Valley, and for things that people just couldn't understand. Like, what's the point of that? And then they were proven right when it burst. But then there was still the internet as a whole was like, oh, hang on, the technology there is useful. It's just the what was built on top of it was people build things really quickly and without thought, I think.
Yeah. Do you think Web3 has had its .com bubble moment with this bear market? Because I remember when Beeple sold his NFT for $69 million it was last year, he was asked whether we were in a bubble, and he said, yes, we definitely are.
Yeah.
And I feel like now, if we were in one, it absolutely has burst.
So I think it's a complicated question to answer. I said we talked about NFTs about 9 months ago in an episode, and I remember saying that I think we're in a bubble. Mm-hmm. But the reason I thought we were in a bubble is also I was there for the ICO thing, and it was kind of the same. There was a new ICO every single day, like a new NFT collection. And people were like, this is the next big thing, like the NFT collections. They were pumping money into it, and people were getting dumb rich off of like terrible ideas. Mm-hmm. But that was the ICO pump. And I didn't know back then. I think, I can't really remember, but I have a feeling that I thought we just got in early, and that we were like, not everything was going to make it, but the reason everything was going up so quickly is because we'd got in early at a new tech. And I think I was a bit, washed up in that, like fervor that was around at the time. And then the ICO thing just bombed, and like a few, other than some altcoins that had good applications, most things just died or were scams or rug pulls, or just like terrible. And so when the NFTs started following the same sort of trajectory, where people were creating these collections, they were selling for stupid money immediately, and someone would go, this NFT collection is going to blow up, and then it blows up, and then they're driving a Bugatti. And I remember thinking, well, I have already seen this. Like, this happened once before. So as for the question of the bubble, yes, I think NFTs were in a bubble. I think that was obvious. Even when we were in it, it was pretty obvious that it was just unsustainable growth, and without added value. That's what I think my problem was. We weren't adding value, but we were adding money, and it just didn't seem to make sense to me. So I do think we're in a bubble there. But I think the interesting question is whether we have been in a giant bubble like the whole time, or is it ICO bubble, NFT bubble, but crypto as a whole is still fine? Or is it just like, I mean, obviously this bear market's people are arguing it's the worst bear market crypto's ever been in, which seems fair given the heights it got to before it. We have obviously seen it, burst before. I really struggle to decide. Part of me thinks that there's going to be another boom, another full bull market that's going to be based on something new. I think it'll be utility, but who knows? And then part of me thinks that, no, that really has been it. The really golden years of just making free money is gone. And now we're left with the companies that actually have value and products that are useful. And we're now going to build up sensibly over the next 10 years rather than these crazy spikes that, again, unsustainable. So I'm torn between those two. I'm not sure. And as our predictions have shown, you shouldn't listen to me anyway. But what are your thoughts on that?
So I've got a few thoughts in mind based off the back of that. I think the first one being, if this was our .com bubble moment, which I think it probably was, I think the only, I say it's a caveat, but this probably happened around the .com bubble time as well, is VC money is still going into stupid things. There's still so much VC money being thrown at everything that, well, anyone that has a nice looking presentation, basically. And I think we're kind of like early 2000s internet, 2003, 2004, when we started seeing, the internet was becoming a bit more formulated. It's like, okay, these are good ideas, these are bad ideas. We're still in the phase where it's very much like, these are just ideas. We don't know what's good or what's bad. We've just thrown money at it and then figure it out later. And I've just hit my mic stand. But the my second point to that was, I think there's this has always been the case in the NFT industry. It's always been, if we're in a bear, there's definitely going to be a bull again, and we're going to have this massive boom, and everyone's going to make so much money, which might happen, might not, but I think it's not the best plan of action to be piling everything into the bear market in the anticipation that everything's going to go up in 6 months. But with that in mind, if you look at the stock market, let's say you put your money in the American stock market for a long-term period, you do just go up on a long-term basis. So I don't think crypto and blockchain, Web3, etc. has been around for long enough for us to say that this market will operate in a similar way. But also, I don't think we have that many proper companies in Web3 yet. As much as CryptoPunks and Bored Ape and Yuga Labs, etc. are blue chip collections, they're not really businesses yet. They just have ideas and are playing around with things and have perks for being holders, but they're not really, like, what are they giving to the wider community or to the wider space? I'm not too sure yet. That's not to say that, value based on speculation shouldn't exist, because there's plenty of examples that exist in the real world. But it seems, even more so in Web3, it's a very odd thing to be like, okay, so why is that worth as much as it is? Well, lots of people like it, I suppose, and you can get merch and go to a party. Okay, but why is it worth 100k? Yeah. It just kind of is, which isn't a great answer.
No, I mean, I think there are examples of good companies out there, but they're not in our sector of crypto very often. There's been a lot of cool stuff this year that's received ton of plaudits, like that Blur liquidity thing, and there's been stuff, but it's outside of our, like, more, at least it's outside of my realm of interest. I only really look at blockchain gaming, which I do expand to metaverse, and obviously NFTs is a staple of it. Tokenomics is a staple of it. But really that's where my sphere of interest is. So I think there are decent companies being built, but there's not many where we are. And again, the timeline is just too short. The one question I have, which I've thought this a lot lately. So I think your point was perfect about, just because there's a bear market doesn't mean there's going to be a bull market. And just because there's a bull market doesn't necessarily mean there'll be a bear market, although that's probably more likely than the former. But I was thinking, so I've been thinking about this a lot lately. There's random people who have absolutely no financial training keep going on, like celebrities are saying, it's all going to go to zero. It's all a scam. It's all a Ponzi. It winds me up. I mean, I saw an article on I think it was Apple News sent me an article saying Jordan Peterson says Bitcoin goes to zero. But I'm like, if you want to talk about, human psychology, then I want to listen to Jordan Peterson about it, because it's an area that he's studied a lot. I don't care what he thinks about crypto. I mean, I don't care. And that's not because I don't like him. There's this weird sort of hero worship with celebrities and who's the celebrity that was, I can't remember who it was, but, an absolute A-lister was in, like, the US Parliament talking about how crypto is going to go to zero and how it's the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. Sorry,
was that Kevin O'Leary?
No.
It was, he's good at business, but I wouldn't trust a thing he says on crypto.
But then he's like mates with Mark Cuban, who is the polar opposite approach on crypto to him. I don't understand why I'm listening. It was an actor. It was an actor I really like, and he was in just a political setting talking about how it's the biggest. I mean, why are we listening to? I mean, maybe he knows some stuff, but I'd rather listen to an absolute expert on the subject.
We'll say, even with absolute experts, I mean, with the 2008 financial crash and Jim Cramer being on MSNBC, being like, you should absolutely hold Bear Stearns, they're definitely not going under. And then 2 days later they collapse. I mean, if we can't even trust the word of experts, then And we're probably going to be just as accurate listening to whatever Tom Cruise or Justin Bieber says on crypto. So
yeah, I mean, there definitely are very few people who are mega knowledgeable, and they're probably not in the public eye. It reminds me a little bit. This is even before my time, so it's definitely before your time. But do you know who Michael Fish is?
The name rings a bell.
So he was a weatherman in the 80s that said there was absolutely not going to be a horrific storm, and then there was a horrific storm, and he's a weatherman. Anyway, the point I was going to bring up is, and I'm putting you on the spot here, so I don't really expect an answer.
Sure.
Because I still can't think of one. Has there ever been a earth-moving thing occur the size of crypto and what blockchain has done? So the internet is comparable in terms of how big it's become and what it's done. Mm-hmm. Has there ever been something so big, so like market affecting, country moving, sizable as we've seen it, mm-hmm. that has collapsed and gone to zero and vanished, and just it's just some crazy flash in the pan? Because I can't think of a flash in the pan that's this big, that has just then whittled to nothing and just become like a funny story for the rest of humanity to look at.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
There probably is, but I've not been able to think of one.
There probably is. But I mean, this is a lot of people have called Web3 or blockchain or NFTs a fad. And
it just seems too big to be a fad, which isn't a good counter argument. I appreciate that's a bad counter argument. But if you told someone back in 2009 that Ethereum would, in just 13 years in the future, be worth $1,500, they would have called you mental. That's not going to happen. Yeah, that just makes me think of the Bitcoin pizza guy. Poor guy. Anyway, he's always the example.
It's when you look at things in the micro, over the past 12 months, 18 months, then everyone's going to be like, oh my God, this thing that was once worth 100k is now worth next to nothing. But if you look at the macro and you think, okay, in the space of 13 years, we've gone from this imaginary virtual currency to something that's worth 5 figures, you realize that it's not all doom and gloom, and there is something tangible here. Whether it's the concept of decentralized currency, whether it's the ability to transfer money across borders like we saw with Ukraine, whether it's using NFTs in blockchain gaming to allow people to trade them freely, whatever it is, there is value there. Yeah. And as many people as there are on one side saying that NFTs and blockchain and Web3 is worthless and it's a waste of our time and a waste of our money, there's as many people on our side that are seeing a future where these technologies have a tangible, useful impact in day-to-day life. So where that's going to take us in the next 12 months, I couldn't tell you, but I'd like to think that, as you said in the recap episode, it's easier to predict 2030 than it is to predict next year. So I think that's just where we are. And it is really hard to even, I mean, I couldn't tell you what's going to happen next week. So.
No. Well, I mean, if you could, you'd be very wealthy. Very, very wealthy.
No, yeah.
There are things that comfort me in the bear market, and I think the biggest one is, so that was just kind of a little side point. Like, I can't think of anything that's ever been this big and this ingrained in life, like so quickly. All the major organization, all the major money, everything, and then has collapsed to nothing. Like, everybody was wrong about that. So I can't think of an example of that. But the other thing that comforts me is investment. Now, this is an area that I've looked at every year since 2018 for blockchain gaming. And I've done that stat a million times. I've done it on this pod. I've done it in articles where I think 2018, 2019, it was getting like 60 million investment. This year, we don't have the final figure yet, but it's believed to be around 11 figures of investment in blockchain gaming and metaverse, which is double-digit billions. So it's more than 10 billion invested. And I was writing an article yesterday about Samsung, which is something else I want to bring up as a positive. But I was looking at investment this year, because this year has felt so bloody long. January just feels a different lifetime ago. And I was looking at investment, and I wrote an article I've got it here, on the 20th of May this year. I wrote an article, and from the 20th of April to the 20th of May 2022, $3 billion was invested in metaverse and blockchain gaming projects. $3 billion in 30 days. So we're almost definitely above 10 billion invested. That is such crazy money. That would be crazy money in a ball. Yeah. In a crypto winter where we've seen, Luna, FTX, BlockFi, we've seen hacks, we've seen Celsius, 3 Arrows Capital. Like, we have seen so many bad things this year that would shake the confidence of investment. And yet all the big money seems to still be going towards metaverse and blockchain gaming. Far less of it's going towards NFT art collections, which I think is a very good move. I do think that was a fad with an asterisk. I think the interest that got ridiculous, and that made it a fad. But I think it's not a fad that will go away entirely, because it just has too much use. It's even too valuable to the art industry, I think, to fully bin that off. But yeah, I've made a lot of points there.
We're still seeing brands like Animoca just fund everything they can get their hands on. Yeah. We're seeing Polygon throw a lot of money around, ImmutableX partnering with a lot of studios and a lot of upcoming games, which all seem really cool. Just touching on the art side, it just brought up something in my mind. 2022 was kind of the rise of the NFT art gallery. Do you think they're all just going to close? I kind of, we went to that one in London. It wasn't really open as a gallery. It was just, it had a DJ in it and a load of cheap food. But I can't see it catching on. I can't see the whole idea of a digital art gallery becoming this. People are like, oh, what are we gonna do today, kids? Oh, we're gonna go to the NFT art gallery. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Right? Who wants to go into a gallery and look at punk that they can go look at on Twitter? And I know, I get it with physical art. Looking at a picture on Google of the Mona Lisa and looking at the physical Mona Lisa are very different things. But looking at a Bored Ape on Twitter and a Bored Ape on a digital screen is literally the exact same thing.
Yes, there would have to be something that can distinguish it from being able to view it. I'm always just nervous of saying it's definitely not going to be a thing, because we've had it throughout history where people have said, firstly they said no one is just going to sit around watching a plywood box all day, which was talking about the TV. Yes, and then it became that, and then someone said, it was someone really famous as well. Might have been Charlie Chaplin, said something about. People won't go to the cinema because they want to see blood and flesh on the stage. Yes. Yeah. So you've got all these, and I think what makes it scary is I think their logic is pretty sound, because that's all that's happened throughout history. Why would it change now? It does seem unlikely, but at the same time, I don't see the point of an NFT gallery for exactly for the reason you said, unless there was some physical counterpart. But then that's just an art gallery. I can't see the point. No,
we could probably add this onto our predictions and we'll look back at it next year. But anyway, going back to blockchain gaming, it has been a hell of a year. There hasn't been many releases.
No,
but to be fair, we've just seen the Illuvium open beta, which, there's not a lot for you to actually do in there at the moment, but it's very cool and it looks incredible. Yeah. But again, it's just been a year of building. It's been a year of a lot of announcements of things coming, and a few, closed alphas and playtests here and there. But nothing really tangible, and nothing to go to a traditional gamer and say, hey, look at this cool blockchain game. There's a few instances out there, but unless you like card games, there's not a lot to show.
Yeah, I think if you like card games, if you're really into Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, I do think that Gods Unchained and Skyweaver would be enjoyable for you. Yep. I think that's a good example. I also think Big Time would appeal to some MMO players. Yeah. I think it's still a little way off of being the final product, but it's got extremely good foundations to it. We haven't seen many releases, but then I think you and I both knew we wouldn't this year. It's still, the timeline isn't long enough. We have seen some early access and some alphas that are positive, because I like to see gameplay. Shrapnel was an example that sticks in my mind, even though I had a little dig at their devs on Twitter, because they released their gameplay footage, and the guy playing the game for their gameplay footage has probably the worst aim I've ever seen a human being have. And what was funny is I tweeted it. I was like, you got to stop this guy drinking in the mornings, because I mean, his aim is dreadful. And the tweet was liked by Shrapnel, and then it was liked by a load of other people. And I happened to click, like, you know, where it says like liked by 12 people, and I clicked to see who it was, and they were all like devs at Shrapnel. So I reckon he probably, I'm going to put a marker here, I reckon he probably got some for that, for his aim, and that it was already like a joke in their office. But yeah, like we're starting to see gameplay, which is the big one for me. I need to see gameplay. I need to play it. We've seen a lot of awards as well given out.
Yeah, just before we get on to the awards, I just want to say, but of course I've mentioned Animoca throwing money at everything. I think it gets to a point where they actually want to see what they're spending their money on. Because I don't think they're seeing all too much at the moment. Like, hey, we've spent several billions. What have we got? Well, we've got this League of Legends looking game that looks like it's from 2005, and we've got an MMO that's a long way off being properly ready, and we have a card game, because everyone likes card games, right? Yeah. We don't have much else.
Yeah, it's we've talked about this a few times. It's the problem of blockchain being a selling point rather than supplementing the game itself, rather than improving the game or improving the position of the player within the game. People are just like, look at my blockchain game. It's got blockchain, and hopefully that'll get a lot of blockchain players. So the awards, there's been the game awards for blockchain, and then I'm currently on the voting panel for another one that's happening in January. Oh, and I'm looking at all the like the games that win stuff, and some of them I think are amazing, and then I'm reticent to even say this, but then one of my favorite games to play in Web3 is EV.io, right?
Okay. Yep.
I think it's extremely addictive, and it's very quick to get into, and the gameplay's fun, and it's just a fun little shooter that reminds me of Unreal Tournament back in like 2004, right?
Yep.
That won like best esports, I think, at the Game Awards.
Right.
What a lot of people don't know is that EV.io was a Flash game or Flash style game on just like a Newgrounds site that has been repurposed for that. And I think, as much as I enjoy that game, and I really do think it is one of the most playable and enjoyable games in Web3, that shows where we're at. If that's if a browser shooter that was just a Flash game on Newgrounds, like if you search EV.io and look before it become blockchain game, it shows where we are. I mean, we just haven't had enough time to create. If that's winning best esport in 2022, there can't be many competitors, can there?
No, and it shows just how far we've got to go before we are creating games that are on the level that everyone would enjoy.
Yeah, and I feel bad for... I mean, I think EV.io is going to have a rough time anyway, because it's Solana, and Solana is having probably the worst year of almost any chain that isn't... Okay, we don't need to...
Well, hey, we've just seen DeGods and Utes both announce they're going cross chains. So.
Yeah, I think Solana's been a real rough one. I hope they survive, because I actually quite like the ecosystem, and I like the stuff that's built on it, and I like the community of Solana. But I do think, I mean, it is just sliding. I've got it on my watch list on my phone. Every time my phone buzzes, like Liz, my girlfriend, a few times goes, "Who's blowing up your phone?" And I've gone, "No, not a person. It's an ecosystem."
No, Solana diving is blowing up my phone.
I mean, it's below $10 now, I think, which is
I haven't looked at the coin market. I don't have any money in Solana, but I had a look at I hadn't looked at the coin market cap graphs when DeGods and Utes made that announcement that they were moving to Polygon and ETH. but I would hazard a guess that did not great things to the price of Solana, because now you look at Solana and you're like, well, what's on it? Well, it doesn't really have any prominent NFT collections anymore. And, I mean, it's got EV.io as a game, but what else is there? Not a lot.
It has a few bits and pieces, mainly that I've found on Fractal. But now Fractal's got multi-chain as well.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look good. While we're talking about Polygon, though, that is my pick for biggest winner this year.
Yeah.
I think what they've done is pretty crazy. The growth that they've seen where others are receding at a rate of knots. They have obviously they've done the big flagship partnerships. The Reddit partnership was one of the greatest examples of onboarding people that aren't necessarily interested in NFTs and showing why it can be useful as like a sort of a membership style thing. And then obviously Starbucks, which is now rolled out and working. I just think Polygon has so many departments that full disclosure, Token Gamer has partnered with Polygon. There's no money changed hands or anything. It's really just like an access thing that we have access to Polygon's tools and they can help us with stuff. But from my brief time, because it's not been that long we've been partnered with them, my brief time in the Polygon ecosystem, they have so many departments working on so many different things, from like music to film to gaming to DeFi. They have these departments that can help you with all these different things, and it's really crazy how quickly they're building. And I think gaming wise, I think they've been light on the ground for a while, but it feels like the reason they've been light on the ground is because they've got the big things that are perhaps coming, and they're working on maybe bigger picture stuff and not trying to scoop up the current popular games. So yeah, that was my biggest winner for this year, I would say. I'm pretty confident it's Polygon.
Yeah, I'm minded to agree with you. I mean, we had Brian Chunzo, the Metaverse lead, on the podcast several months ago.
Yeah.
And Polygon very much have like this two-pronged approach to Web3. They have this entertainment side where, they're partnering with Disney and Starbucks and Meta and Reddit and everyone else. And then they have the gaming side where, they're looking to partner with upcoming quality titles to bring them to the blockchain. And I think on both ends they've done a fantastic job this year. I mean, I watched their 2020 recap that they posted to Twitter, and I think they said that they've done 960 million transactions on Polygon this year, deployed 750,000 smart contracts. There's about 250,000 people writing smart contracts on Polygon, which that's, I don't know how the hell they've got that number, but that's a pretty crazy amount. They released their ZK EVM this year, which it's a fantastic tool for being a layer 2 solution and getting games into the Polygon ecosystem. Their slides say they have 201 million unique addresses. I'm not sure, but I'll take that at their word. But I mean, in any case, they've had an incredible year, and it looks like they're just continuing to grow coming into 2023. And they've not just been growing in the Web3 space. I mean, they had a presence at Gamescom that we were both at. Yep. And they've really made an effort to get as many of their biz dev people out into the wider space, the wider gaming space and the wider entertainment space, to pledge the case for blockchain and Web3 having tangible benefits moving forwards. And they've made great strides in that respect. So I think especially on the entertainment side, they've been one of the biggest winners. I mean, I think Reddit has been the Reddit's new NFTs have been one of the best kind of onboarding little things we've seen this year. I mean, we've given, I can't remember how many NFTs it is off the top of my head, but you've basically given a load of Reddit users Polygon NFTs that most of them don't really even know they're NFTs. They just want a cool Reddit snoo. And I mean, I've got 2, 3, 4, something like that, and I'm sure there's plenty of Reddit users that have one because Reddit was just giving them away for free. That I mean, without even know it, they now have an NFT.
But it wasn't hidden. It wasn't like
no,
it wasn't Cloak and Dagger. It was a digital collectible.
Yeah.
And it was pretty widely publicized that it was an NFT, even if they didn't ram it down your throat. But then there's no point in polarizing the matter.
No, but I think they went about it the best way. It was give the community something they want, but let it have blockchain tech in it.
Yeah.
So I mean,
you own your own avatar.
People have been asking for like customizable Reddit snooze for a very long time, and making that a feature that has Web3 tech in it was genius, because then you have ways to compare how rare yours is compared to someone else's. You can look at its value, you can see what other people think it's worth, etc. So I mean, that was a masterstroke. And you know, they've partnered with Meta, which is huge. I think that's going to have big things coming probably next year or the year after. Yeah. But we'll see what happens on that front. Starbucks, as we said, Disney, they've just had an incredible year.
They've also onboarded a lot of dApps. They released that stat. I can't remember the exact number. Was it 30,000 dApps or something like that? They released a stat on Twitter. Like, this is how many dApps we've now got. Like, we've been onboarding a lot of different dApps, and a lot of developers have come here to build. And then I was on the call with one of the team to discuss partnering. And I was like, that's crazy how many people you onboarded. I saw that the other day. And he's like, oh yeah, it's double that now. I was like, oh God, like, you are really snowballing. So yeah. I think they're going to become one of the big, if I had to make a prediction for 2023, which ecosystem is going to go the furthest or grow the most or make the most profound moves, I'd say it's going to be Polygon. And I think in 2022, it's very hard to be a winner. And I'm sure they had real losses like everyone did, but they have not slowed. They have ramped up and they pushed on. So for me, the biggest winner. I don't think we need to do a biggest loser though. I wouldn't know where to start.
Well, in terms of cryptocurrency, it's quite easy. In terms of like NFT chain, it's a little harder.
There's just, do you know what I had forgotten about until I was writing notes for this? Is I'd forgotten the Ronin bridge hack.
That was this year.
That was this year.
It doesn't feel like it.
I remember thinking, oh my God, 600 million, a blockchain game, the most famous blockchain game. I was like, oh, this is a terrible thing to happen for 2022. I remember thinking, I hope this is the worst thing that happens for 2022, but alas, no. No,
we've had plenty of downsides this year for sure. But I mean, if we want to talk, like I said, biggest winners and losers in crypto is, I mean, all crypto's gone down, but some has gone down a lot more than others. Luna and FTT, for example, I think that's quite obvious.
Yeah.
But there's something that just popped into mind as you were talking there is, obviously Polygon's had a fantastic year. And I think another chain that's had a fantastic year is ImmutableX. I think especially with getting GameStop. I mean, there's no better way of getting this highly enthused audience that has just gotten into, markets and trading into Web3. So that was a masterstroke, and they have huge things in the pipeline for 2023 and beyond. And I'm not just saying that because obviously Atomic Hub's partnered with them, but having looked at their roadmap, they have some things that I'm very interested for. Yeah. But in terms of losers, I mean, I've got some in mind, kind of losing chains in the NFT space this year. Do I want to name them? I feel like I'm going to shoot myself in the foot because it will be 3 months down the line, and
it's risky.
It is risky, but there are a few that pop into mind. I'll just stick to the winner. I think Polygon and IMX have been the real winners this year.
Yeah, I think IMX is. I mean, the GME thing wasn't quiet, but I think IMX have been like the quiet winners. Whereas Polygon's been more of a loud winner with Starbucks and Reddit and the implementation. Whereas I feel like IMX there's lots. If you're watching, IMX is doing a ton of stuff.
Yeah,
but if it's not as in your face as what Polygon has done, but again, 2023, I would say, even with my limited knowledge, like you obviously have privileged knowledge of what IMX is up to. Yeah. Even without it, I would say they're probably a good bet for who's going to be a winner in 2023. I think we should stay on positives because last week was fairly negative. We know, I mean, Lunaterra, Ronin Hack, FTX, BlockFi, Celsius, 3 Arrows Capital, the whole market as a whole. There's lots of, we know the negatives.
Yeah.
Everybody, I don't think we need to recap that. I think what's more interesting is recapping some positives that people might have missed, which is roughly what we've been doing. I'd also say a big one is the Ethereum EVM upgrade.
Yeah.
Not enough people have remembered that in September it was a major move for Ethereum, moving to the proof of stake consensus mechanism, the merge as it was called, which is kind of a cool name. So that was another really big positive. Yeah. It didn't have the effects that people thought it was going to have in terms of gas fees and stuff, but they are coming.
Yeah, but that's another kind of long play. I mean, the September launch was just the first part of what I think is like a 2-year roadmap for the full transition. So yeah, got a lot to look forward to in that respect. I mentioned it at the end of the last episode, but I still find it hard to believe that Twitter NFT profile pictures was this year. That seems like it happened ages ago, but was this year as well.
Doesn't feel like it's caught on that much. Maybe it's just not in my circle.
I think as someone who's a proper Twitter degen, it's something you saw a lot more before Elon took over and then everything broke. But it's still... There was a particular influencer, I can't remember his name. Oh, Shillen Villain. When he changed his profile picture from... I can't remember what collection it was, but he changed it from one collection to a mutant ape.
Right.
And he was just like, oh, hey, I just want a fresh profile picture, basically. And the amount of people in the comments on that post been like, oh, how dare you? I used to trust you when you have this profile picture, and now you've got this one. I don't want to listen to you anymore. It's weird how many people, especially in the NFT community on Twitter, really invest a lot of their... or really put a lot of their worth in the people they follow and who they value, etc., and what their profile picture is. And we've discussed on previous episodes how, you can only have one, and there's obvious limitations to that. But it's added a lot of value, I feel, to the NFT community, because before then, I mean, anyone could add a bored ape as their profile picture, and plenty of people did. Yeah. But at least now you've got a way of thinking, okay, that person actually owns that profile picture, and they're not just, ripping it off. And it's... In terms of utility for the NFT space, it probably trumps what a lot of actual NFT projects have been able to give this year.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was important to add that, because it felt as if, as Twitter was such a big part of, and it still is a big part of Web3, it didn't make sense that you couldn't verifiably own an NFT in the Twitter space, because it just felt like it was undoing a lot of the ownership benefits of NFTs in the first place. I'd say Twitter in general had a good year from its users' point of view.
That's what Elon will tell you.
Because I'm talking only in the context of Web3 at least. Because Twitter journalism and sleuthing has become the most powerful weapon in Web3, with, undoing things and figuring out that people aren't playing by the rules. And block explorers are, the path that they've taken to do a lot of this. And I think that's a really cool thing that's come out of it, because this is the whole point of decentralization and trustlessness and being transparent. And I'm not sure it's always been used as much as it can be used. But this year it feels like Twitter journalism, where you've got these long threads where people are breaking stuff down and they figured stuff out. And I want that to continue, because it's just excellent. And that really is a win.
I think the most recent example of that, I know it's not Web3 related, but is the Twitter files, as Elon called it, where, they started talking about some of the stuff that happened years ago in Twitter that has now been uncovered. But I think that's something that's definitely happened more this year than it has at any other point in time, and not just in Web3. I mean, we saw so much of the FTT saga break over Twitter, basically. And it's just continued in so many other spaces. I don't know if you saw, people outside the UK will have no idea what we're talking about, but Lad Baby had their 5th UK number one. God, and of course BBC and all the TV channels were like, oh my god, they're doing it for charity, da, 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 da. And then all you saw on Twitter was people being like, well, they've given barely any of the money to charity, what are they doing? Why are all these news stations like praising this thing? And this has happened with so many other things, where again, more so this year than ever before, I've seen a clear difference between what traditional media reports and what the actual reaction to that is on sites like Twitter, which is crazy to see. And it's amazing that we have this alternative source of, other than having opinions and cool things dictated to us, it's cool to have this Twitter community that is, and Reddit to an extent as well, that will openly critique and discuss, and you get a much better feeling for what people's thoughts and opinions is, or are, I should say. And again, that does extend to Web3, like I said, with Sam Bankman-Fried and with Luna and with some of those tweets around the Luna saga. Jesus Christ.
God. Yeah, we saw that was crazy.
I think SBF kind of fell into the same pit when FTX went under, being like, I'll get you your money back. I'm sorry. Which, like, I mean, when you've... Anyway, let's stay away from the negative stuff. But I mean, even so, I would say pretty much every NFT collection, every Web3 project, Twitter is the place where news breaks. And I mean, that's kind of been how it's been in traditional spaces anyway, but it really gives this platform so much credence and so much power. And there's really, despite the bear market, there's been a real growth in NFT Twitter this year. You know, not just because of profile pictures, but I think the bear market has brought a lot of communities closer together. And a lot of people have, you know, grown their respect for the people that are still around. And this year, and I'm not sure if this is something you've noticed, but it's been kind of been the year of, because the money's not there and because there's been a general slowdown, kind of the year of the growth of information. There's been a load of really cool newsletters pop up this year. The Milk Road, Flourish Notes, NFT Insider started their newsletter this year. But there's been a lot of, hey, now all the speculators have gone, let's ensure we all know what we're on about. We understand this space. We understand the in and outs. We know why it can be a good thing in future. You know, why it's worth being a place that we stick around in and see what's going to happen. And it's, I've gone on about 6 different tangents in the space of 2 minutes there. But I mean, there has been a lot of positives this year in so many different areas, and it's easy to latch onto the negatives and be like, oh my God, it's been such a bad year. But there's been a lot of cool stuff happen.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of quiet, cool stuff happening. It gets less press than it did. Like the article I wrote yesterday or the day before about Samsung, Latin America has seen a massive adoption of crypto. It's I put in this article, it's kind of like the lesser known Philippines for crypto adoption. They didn't quite get the press the Philippines got, but Latin America has seen massive amounts of adoption, and Samsung has identified that and has invested $35 million in metaverse experiences and projects that is focused on the Latin American market.
Yep.
So there's still crazy money coming from the biggest companies in the world flying into crypto. And I mean, I think I've covered everything I want to cover. But one thing I was thinking while you were saying, I wonder if you agree, is if there is another bull market, if we see another like we have before, do you think people are going to say, they're going to check where the big influencers in the next bull market, if they were around in 2022, like, you know, like you have to earn your spurs. Like I want to go back. If there's someone in the next bull market, say 2025, we go on a massive bull market, I will want to know what they were up to in 2022. Were you part of the people that just left and came back when the money came back? Or were you there building? Were you trying to improve the space while everyone else had left? I don't know if everyone will do that, but
I definitely think there's going to be a certain subsect of the community that is, as soon as these people they don't know start popping up, as soon as the graphs start rising, they think, well, what were you doing 3 months ago?
Where were you? Yeah, exactly.
But that's not to say that everyone that is here now is necessarily in it for the right. I mean, someone that has blown up on NFT Twitter this year is BitBoy Crypto. because, he went to the Bahamas to try and hunt down SBF and he followed that saga. But if you look under most of his tweets, it's most people saying, well, why were you shilling FTT 6 months ago?
The viral Twitter post about him that gets linked on every tweet he does. Someone links that and he's like, yeah, I've already addressed this. But I mean, he shilled millions of pounds worth of coins.
Yeah, but it's not just coins, it's not just FTT, it's NFT collections. He had that NFT drop on Wax, if you remember.
Vaguely. I think you had to remind me of that. I'd forgotten that happened, because he didn't promote it, did he?
No, on the day it happened, he didn't even bother promoting it. But presumably, he got some of the financial cut from that. So, but anyway, this isn't designed to just crap all over BitBoy. But there's plenty of people in this space right now that have shady reputations, and but it's the same as anyone in this media space today, whether it's Piers Morgan or Jordan Peterson or whoever it is. The more that, or Andrew Tate is probably the biggest example at the moment. If you've got this big vocal audience that's against someone, you've also got this big vocal audience that's like, oh, but he's allowed to say what he wants, and I kind of agree with some things he says, and and it just. But I do think there's going to be a certain amount of people, if times get good again, that are going to look back and think, well, where were you? But I think that's, in that respect, those of us that are around here right now, so everyone listening to this podcast and us too, I think it gives us a bit of, we've been through the bad times as well as the good. I mean, you've been through one more bear market than I have.
But I don't feel like the last one was quite. I don't think it was as bad as this one.
No.
And I also feel like I wasn't as personally invested. I remember I made some money and I didn't take it out, and then I watched it go all the way back down again. And I remember thinking, well, bummer. Like, it was a cool idea. I still like crypto. I still think blockchain's useful, and I still, wrote for Token Gamer. But I didn't feel as like I'm full time now. I'm all in.
Yep.
So it's definitely been harder this year. But as we've shown, there are positives.
Yeah, no, there absolutely is for sure, and I think that's a good note on which to wrap up 2022.
Last one, 2022, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. We'd have 51 episodes. I think that's 45 episodes this year, 46, something like that. So it's been a crazy year for the podcast, and hey, we're going to keep on going into 2023. So yeah, let's end it on a positive note. Rob, absolutely. Where can we find you?
TokenGamer.
TokenGamer.
Let's try that again. TokenGamer.io for all blockchain gaming news and metaverse news. Then we've got our Twitch channel. Just search Token Gamer on anything and you'll find us at Token Gamer News on Twitter. And you can find me personally in some places. That's it. You'll find me if you want to find me. Over to you, John.
Awesome. So NFTinsider.io for the latest NFT news and blockchain gaming news, all that good stuff. Got a few end of year articles and videos to come out, so look out for those. And at NFTinsider_IO on Twitter and Instagram. And our newsletter, NFTinsider.io/newsletter, has some cool giveaways in the last few weeks, so go check that out. Me personally, at Hydropowered, HYDROPWRD on everything. Let's not list them again. Yep. Twitter's the best one. Pop me a GM, I'll always reply. And I think that's everything from me.
Okay, well, that was a rough year, but I hope you are still, hope you're all still alive and functioning and looking forward to 2023, which, let's face it, no, I'm not saying
no,
that.
Don't say
I'm not
that.
saying that. I'm not saying that. I didn't say it. You filled in the blanks and you may have filled them in incorrectly. But let's hope 2023 is an uptick and we see more positives. And as we've just shown, there has been a lot of positives. So 2023, let's see. Hopefully it improves. I don't know how to do these outros. I don't know how I've ended up in the situation where I'm doing the outro. So, John, do you want to play us out? Oh no, have I got to double down?
No, go on, go for it.
Okay. Well, I hope you had a good Christmas and a good festive period. If you celebrate it, if you don't, then I hope you had a nice week. 2022 is now over, or it will be over by the next episode. So I hope you have a nice New Year's. I hope you had a good 2022, and we will see you in 2023.